Alright, can I start off by saying that this video will be extremely nerdy, so if you're not into the quad cortex and you don't care about latency, you can skip this video. That's okay. As I'm working on my touring rig for 2025 with the Haunted, I'll be using different types of equipment, and my wish was to go back to completely play analog with a real amplifier and cabinet and all that. But at the same time, I don't want to rule out the quad cortex because it's a solution that has been proven very roadworthy in the past couple of years as I've been using them with a power amp live. It sounds great, feels great, and pretty happy about it. But obviously, I want to go the analog route as well, just use an amplifier. And before I wanted to rule out the quad cortex, I want to do a couple of latency tests. If you take a look at my previous The Haunted main patch, which has a rhythm tone, a lead tone, and a clean tone, I basically built this without, not even thinking about what different blocks could add in terms of latency to the whole unit, or if adding another row or a different output and the ins and outs will add delay to the signal. So I decided to make a preset from scratch right here. Actually, I made a preset called Latency Test for the simple purpose of testing the latency of the unit. And the unit itself, as it is, has a latency of 1.75 milliseconds, which is not a lot. But, as you start to add stuff to the quad cortex, the milliseconds and latency will add up. And as I'm talking about latencies up to 5 to 10 milliseconds, some people would say, like, you're not going to hear a difference, man. You're not going to feel a difference. But the main idea with me doing these tests is because as soon as I'm adding more gear, like wireless units, you also have the in-ear monitoring systems and all that, all of those things will also add latency, and at the end of the day, the sum of all those latencies, if I can improve that, then I'm happy. So that's why I'm kind of like looking for places where I could reduce my latency. And the reason is I want it to feel analog. With an analog amplifier, you just connect the cable into the amplifier and the response is just in your face right there. There is a very, very big difference between modelers and playing a real amplifier because of this lack of latency. So I want to remove as much latency as possible in a modeler because all in all, I think the quad cortex is an excellent unit, and it's still probably the top contender for my live situation right here. And obviously using a 2-power amplifier with this. So I made a test here in Logic, and I've shown this before, I think in another video, but I've done some more testing with this. So I have a click that I sent to different units. I tried the quad cortex, I tried the nano cortex, and also the fractal VP4, which is effects unit only. I was checking the latency of that if I would connect, to my amplifier and all that, and see how much that would affect the whole spectrum. Anyways, I did a couple of tests. So we have the click up here. Here's the reference. The reference is basically just cable from the output of my audio interface into the input of the interface, basically giving absolute zero latency, just showcasing that the system itself, what it's sending out and going into the audio interface, it's 0 milliseconds. This track right here is when I used a chug pedal in a loop in the quad cortex, and with that added digital to analog and analog to digital conversion, I will get 4 milliseconds of latency. If I would use a capture of a chug pedal in the quad cortex, I was capturing my chug pedal into this thing. That's what I'm using for this test, by the way. Then I basically get the 1.85 millisecond latency on that. So adding a neural capture, it's fine. It doesn't add too much to the overall latency of the unit. So that chug capture right here is basically my main tone that I will send in to a power amplifier and be happy about it. But what I did is that I kept on adding different blocks to this preset right here in the signal path to see if whatever I put on there would add latency. So right now I have a noise gate right here. Then I have a simple delay before the amplifier. It's a test basically. And then afterwards I have a capture of a clean channel. I have a chorus, an analog delay in mono, and a tape delay. And none of these additional blocks added any latency to this initial 1.85 millisecond latency that I got with this. So with that, I have a single path going to output 3. That's what I sent to my tube power amplifier head, and that's my main tone going to a cabinet, and it's going to be amazing. But I also wanted to use the outputs, the XLR outputs on the quad Cortex to send the signal with an impulse response to front of house. So our front of house guy can have both a microphone cabinet and a direct signal from the quad Cortex, and he can mix that up and use whatever. A mic'd up tone might sound very different from day to day, and you know, depending on a venue or a festival or something like that. A direct tone going from the quad Cortex will always be it's safe, I would say. So with that, I added a second signal path right here. As of right now, it's empty, but basically sending one signal to output 1 as well, which is the main output at the back there, the XLR. So if I would put a cabinet on here, like this, we take a 4x12, just any, like that. So right now, I'm going to record the latency of this, the patch, and as you can see right here, that additional cab block right there added 2 milliseconds worth of latency in this case. The problem here is that it affects the whole patch. So even though the cab impulse response is on output number 1, it also affects the output number 3, even though, you know, output number 3 doesn't go through the signal path with the cab impulse response. So that cabinet impulse response adds 2 milliseconds right there. And I'd rather not have that. I tried also adding, you know, the IR loader thingy and the absolute simplest one, the single M light right there. Let's try and check the latency for that. And the single IR loader M light right here adds 0.5 millisecond. So it's a lot better than the cabinet impulse response. So if I would use it, I would probably use that. And at this point, you're going to be like, Ola, stop it. You're not going to feel 0.5 millisecond or 2 milliseconds. Promise me. And I know. I just think this is very interesting. It's me learning about the unit a little bit and you know, knowing its limitations, even though it's not a limitation. However, there is another option I can do with this, and this is getting really nerdy. Say I don't want to have the block, and I want to have it back to the original 1.85 milliseconds right here. I could route out like this to output 1 into another Cortex, or anything that can load an impulse response into it, and I can have that being sent to the front of house as an extra. But also, I don't want to bring all the extra stuff as well. So I think what I'm going for in this case is going to be that that IR loader with the single ST light right there, because it adds just 0.5 millisecond. That's all I want to show. I think it's really interesting. There is a guy on YouTube that has made a latency test of all the modelers out there. I'll try and link it up here. It's very interesting, and it shows that the Boss GT1000 has the best latency out of all of these, which is like 0.6, 0.7, which is very impressive. All right, I'm going to bring this into the other room and play a little bit. At least you get a little bit of a sound example, at least, going through a tube power amplifier. So let's head into the other room. Thank you so much for watching. All right, so it's actually a couple of days later after I filmed this previous segment, and I've talked a little bit with Neural DSP. Poor people at Neural DSP, they're getting heart attacks by all my videos where I'm just trying shit out without even asking them. But no, they actually helped me out. I reached out to them in regards to this, like, okay, if I added a cab impulse response to the second row, that I will get an additional latency. And apparently that's thanks to the dynamic latency compensation, and that basically means that the latency will stay the same even if you disengage blocks here and there. It's basically to help with phasing more than anything, so you can shut that off. But I also got a tip to just use a send block before a cabinet impulse response. So right now I'm using a send signal right here that sends the signal before the cabinet impulse response block, and that will be the signal that goes into my amplifier and cabinet, and this block also passes through the signal going into the cabinet impulse response, going to output 1 and 2, which can be routed to front of house, and everyone is happy. No added latency, no nothing. I'm at 1.85 millisecond latency right here, and I'm happy. So I just wanted to make this extra little segment right there to clear some stuff. And basically, it more solidifies my decision to bring the quad Cortex with me live. So, okay, back to Ola. He was about to play some shitty riffs. All right, moment of truth. I mean, I know already how it's gonna sound. Because I made this patch yesterday. It sounds fucking insane. You have a lead tone? And a clean tone. Chorus and delay, basically. Oh shit. So there you go. A little sound test, at least, of this little rig right there. Hell yeah.